Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Music Den. I'm your host, Armando Venditti. Hoping you guys are having a good day, and above all else, that you are looking after yourselves and one another. Ladies and gentlemen, again, before I get into the topic of this episode, I want to welcome back to the channel my two co-hosts and two cohorts, Mr. Ken Cheshire. How's it going, Ken?
Going well, Armando. Glad to be here.
Glad that you're back. And the one and only, the man of the hour, Mr. Jim Bricker.
Hi, Armando. I'm happy that you want to take another chance and have me back on your glorious channel. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you very much. Good that you're back. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with episode 5 of Is This a Masterpiece? Now, I have put together a list of 5 albums that anyone looking at this list, the uh, music expert, let's say, in quotes, or the casual listener would look at this list and would probably say that the 5 albums on this list would be considered a masterpiece. Now, as we've said before in the previous four, I was going to say 4 channels, but 4 episodes, that there are varying degrees of what would be considered a masterpiece. The music, the production on the album, the arrangement of the songs, down to the artwork that appears on the cover. There are varying degrees of what would be considered a masterpiece. The band that we're going to cover in this episode, to some degree, is a polarizing band. Some people think that this band is the best or a fantastic band. I would agree. Other people would look at this band and look at their body of work and say, meh, not really. Right? The band we're going to be talking about is Queen, and the album we're going to be talking about is A Night at the Opera. Right? A Night at the Opera is Queen's 4th release. It is a follow-up release to their 1974 album, Sheer Heart Attack. It was released, depending on the dates that you read up on, it was either released on November 21st or November 28th, 1975. It was recorded from August 24th to November of 1975, with the exception of the final track, God Save the Queen, which was recorded on October 27th, 1974. Upon release, the album reached #1 in the UK, big surprise, #4 in the US, and #2 in Canada. Now, this album has a has a long history, has a varying history, a sordid history. Um, Queen were at a bit of a crossroads with this album. Um, they had a big success with Sheer Heart Attack, the album itself, and the single of Killer Queen, which reached #2 in the UK charts and #12 in the US charts. The second single from Sheer Heart Attack was Now I'm Here, which reached #11 in the UK charts. And according to Roger Taylor, Queen were very much a band on the rise at this point, although their fortunes told a different story. According to Roger Taylor, um, they had a total of 1,500 quid in the bank and they were flat broke. And they were going through a bit of a change in terms of, well, a hell of a change in terms of management. They were signed to Trident Audio Productions, headed up by the Sheffield brothers, Barry and Norman Sheffield. And during the tour for Sheer Heart Attack and also the Queen 2 tour, Roger Taylor was being told that they didn't want him to break any drumsticks as he was playing because they couldn't afford to give him new drumsticks. Um,
Hey,
Queen at this point were living on 60 quid a week each. And they found out that they felt that something was wrong because one of the Sheffield brothers had just bought himself a second Rolls Royce. So they thought that there was an issue here. So they looked about getting a new manager and they talked with various managers. One of them was Peter Grant, who managed Led Zeppelin. And Peter Grant said, he would love to have them, join his organization. He'd love to represent them. One proviso, they would have to sign to Swan Song Records, which was Led Zeppelin's label. And for a while there, Queen did think about the offer. However, Peter Grant wanted them to go on tour as opposed to recording a new album. And the other condition, the other factor that was running through their heads was that if they signed with Peter Grant, they would always be considered second to Led Zeppelin, and they didn't want to have that happen. As much as they loved Zeppelin and wanted to be considered the next Led Zeppelin in terms of their output, they couldn't handle that. So they opted to go with John Reed. Now, John Reed at the time was managing Elton John, and he had said to them, look, I'll take care of the business side of things. You go in the studio and you make the best possible record you can make. Don't worry about the business side. Leave it up to me. Go away, go do what you have to do. And, you know, we'll take care of the rest once you come out of the studio. Well, they signed with John Reed, and when Freddie Mercury was asked his opinion about the previous management, I do believe this statement came out around September of 1975. And the quote was, as far as we are concerned, they are deceased. They cease to exist with us in any capacity whatsoever. One leaves them behind as one will leave behind excretia. We feel so relieved. Okay. Now, there were also critics at the time that felt that A Night at the Opera was Queen's apex, that they could not, surpass what they did on A Night at the Opera. Now, I will save my judgment on that. For me, in terms of this album, I've reappraised my thoughts on this album. Everyone out there knows, and their dog, they all know I'm a major Queen fan. Okay. I have known of this album since I was 7 years old. Okay. This album, like the other albums that we spoke about on the previous episodes of this series, for some, it is a rite of passage. Okay. What I like about this album is the variety. Queen were always a band, especially in the 70s, that thrived on variety. Okay. On this album, you go from rock to pop to vaudeville to dancehall to bombast to prog to ballads to vaudeville and back to rock with obviously the single Bohemian Rhapsody. There was one song on this album that depending on the day listening to it, I really really didn't care much for it, and that was Good Company, the George Formby jazz ragtime number. But doing this episode and preparing for it and re-listening to it again, I have gained a new appreciation for it. And the fact that you have Brian May, who with his guitar in different tunings was able to recreate an entire ragtime jazz band, just using his guitar, to me is fantastic. Okay. The album overall for me works on every level. Again, from Death on Two Legs to Lazing on a Sunday Afternoon to I'm in Love with My Car, which, by the way, was the B-side to Bohemian Rhapsody. And Too Much argument earned as much money for Roger Taylor as it did for Freddie Mercury when it was released as the B-side for Bohemian Rhapsody. To 39, the folk space travel, song, to Sweet Lady, to Seaside Rendezvous, just beautifully done. Love of My Life is just a beautiful, poetic love song, just a beautiful ballad. And then you have the cod opera, as it was called, a Bohemian Rhapsody. So
The cod opera,
cod opera,
like cod piece.
yes,
Said the actress to the bishop.
But and then you have the outro of God Save the Queen, which I believe ends the album off in a beautiful, majestic way. Um, I do believe that this album is a masterpiece. I will say that Queen 2 is the album that I will usually go to listen to, but you cannot deny what is on A Night at the Opera. The variety, the majesty of it, the intricacy of it, the whole package. It is just simply fantastic. And there you have my opinion. So now I will pass the virtual mic over to my two cohorts. I'll start with Ken, and you can give us your opinion on this album, sir.
Okay. I feel, um, whereas I've never been a huge Queen fan, so I feel that just about everything on this album is overshadowed by Bohemian Rhapsody. Um, I remember the only other song I ever remember hearing on the radio was "You're My Best Friend." Um, and I think for some people, um, the album suffers from Bohemian Rhapsody being such a huge phenomenon, as it continues to be. Each generation, since its release, each new generation has, discovers a song and is completely, blown away by it, rightfully so. To me, Bohemian Rhapsody is to Queen what Kashmir is to Led Zeppelin. It's it's everything the band is in a concise single song, and which I think not all bands are able to accomplish. Um, for me, I agree with what you say about the variety of the songs. To me, the cohesiveness is um, Brian May's specific guitar tone. What I'm not sure what kind of effect he uses, whether it's compression in a combination and other things too. But that's one of those guitar tones that you hear it and you automatically associate it with Queen and Brian May. For me, that is somewhat of a minus on this because so much of the out that it seems like, with maybe the exception of 39, that that is the predominant guitar sound on the album. And for me, it's just he's such a guitar player, good guitar player. I just love to hear something else. Um, but it is. I'm probably in the minority when it comes to that, obviously, since the album is held in such high regard. Um, there was one point years ago where I thought, well, I don't know very much Queen. I'm going to dip into it. So I went somewhere online to a Queen playlist and just randomly selected songs. And I discovered songs that did not sound like what's on this album. So I'm assuming they're probably from especially the first two albums, I would imagine. And it surprised me because I expected it to kind of be, kind of the same thing. Um, but so ironically, listening to this album again, um, I go back to 39 because it's so different from the other songs
Yeah.
that it's kind of refreshing. Um, the songs are different, but that essential queenness of the sound, the guitar, um, the incredibly close layered vocal harmonies and those things. Um, it's like when you get to Bohemian Rhapsody, which is next to the last song on the album, it's like, okay, everything is building up to this. It's almost like they're leitmotifs building up to Bohemian Rhapsody. And um, so the songs are different, but that core is still there throughout.
Yeah.
And I think I wanted a little bit more variety in the sound, I think. So
Okay.
so yeah, it's a landmark album for sure.
Okay. Jim.
Um, there's a lot of what Ken said that I agree with. I think one of the things I struggle with about A Night at the Opera is that, except for the acoustic guitar that's in 39, I just wish that there was more variety in the choice of the instruments used. I recognize that there's a ton of variety in what's going on in the vocals, and I get that, there's variety in terms of rock and cabaret and ballad and, neoclassical and proggish, but it always feels like it's um, that guitar sound plus bass and drums plus sometimes piano plus that kind of, I'll call it Queen Roy Thomas Baker vocal arrangement that is just become so ubiquitous to them. It's like I wish there were something, different about it. And frankly, this is a struggle that I've had with darn near every Queen album I've ever heard. The first one I ever heard goes back to, I think, either junior high or high school when I purchased Jazz, and then most recently listening to Queen 2 and to this, for some reason I just cannot connect with Queen, and I don't know what it is about it. I mean, I recognize the quality in Brian May's guitar playing. I recognize the quality of the arrangements and the variety, and there's individual tunes that I can sort of point out. You're My Best Friend, I think, is just perfection. It's just, confection perfection, as you say, Armando. And I don't mean that in any kind of sarcastic way. I've always loved that song.
Mhm.
Um, 39 is it's delightful because of its acoustic guitar. Um, Love of My Life is actually, pretty nice with its, kind of free flowing, piano lines. It's like you never really know where the one is, and it's just a neat um, piece of songwriting that way. And Bohemian Rhapsody is absolutely a stone cold classic. Um, I scratch my head sometimes at the way the tunes are arranged on this album. It's like God Save the Queen. Why not lead with that? Bohemian Rhapsody is such a strong, 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 strong song. Why not have that gong just be the end of the entire album? It's like, what could possibly follow that? It's so far above and beyond everything on the record. Why is that not the final statement to make even more of an impact on the listener?
Okay.
Just this kind of this, oh my godness, what did I just experience? Because there ain't nothing else like A Night at the Opera that sounds like that.
Mhm.
Um, when I think about this album, the words that come to mind for me are bombast and excess. And as I say that, I recognize to how you prefaced your whole starting point there, Armando, where there are those who just really like Queen and those who just cannot connect with it and feel it's a little bit this or that or the other thing. And I'm definitely in that category. And it's just something I've never connected with, and I can't really put my fingers on it, on exactly what it is, other than to say it's probably something to do with bombast and excess. And I guess the other thing is that um, sometimes it seems like it's a little too much cabaret on either, on a lot of their albums. It kind of feels like it's just a little bit too much a wink and a nod and that kind of thing. Um, the only other comment that I'll make is that, for me, the Prophet song, there's something there. There's something in the DNA of it that makes me really want to dig into it more. But it kind of feels like you've got this huge baking bowl in your kitchen, right? Follow me on this one.
Go ahead.
Big, heavy, and you're going to make like the greatest batch of batter that ever exists. You're going to bake something exquisite. It just feels like all the ingredients that they poured into the Prophet song just kind of got stuck in that bowl, and they couldn't do anything with it. I mean, to me, it's like this could have been Supper's Ready. It feels like it had that DNA to it, but it didn't grow. It didn't, maybe they didn't put enough yeast. They didn't put enough
Enough
yeast in the
yeast in the
batter.
mix? Okay.
There's just something about it that could have been more, and it just didn't go there. And I know that sounds funny for me, kind of saying it's like, too much bombast and excess, but Genesis did Supper's Ready, and it's more like, oh my God, epic, as opposed to bombast and excess. Even though those are qualities in it, they're not the defining qualities of it.
Okay.
Um, so anyway, that's enough about that. Um, just going back to Queen in general, I mean, I had Queen's Greatest Hits, the 1981 US LP edition when it came out. 14 songs, really loved it. Great variety in there. And I realized that I enjoy Queen, I guess, as a singles band more than I do as an album band, just because I just never really connected with it. I think the only album track of Queen's that I like is Mustafa, which is the lead track from Jazz. Um, Otherwise, I'm just kind of in that singles category, and that's very unlike me.
That's unlike you. Yeah, it is. And
Yeah. So, um, so yeah, I get why people would say this is a masterpiece. I mean, I get why, Rolling Stone in 2020, Rolling Stone ranked this number 128 in the 500 greatest albums of all time. It was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame of 2018. I understand those things, but I that it doesn't build that bridge for me to connect with the music that's on here.
okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. So I will quickly ask the question. Ken, masterpiece or not?
Okay. I'm going to differentiate. Objectively, taking my feelings and the way it strikes me,
Well, I don't like where this
is
is
it a,
going. Go on.
is it a masterpiece? Yes.
Okay.
Based on quality of the recording, based on impact, based on sales or appeal and all that, absolutely. For me personally, it's just not my thing. My tastes tend to run more I don't want to say less bombastic, but for rock and roll, I like mine a little bit more straightforward for the most part, except when I get into the prog stuff. But but objectively, yes, it is a masterpiece. Just not something I would go to very often, personally. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Jim.
Um, if I strike that, as the curator of my own museum of what I feel should be a masterpiece, I would not hang this particular album in there.
Okay.
Even though, like I said, I recognize all these other people do think it's great, and I get sort of the inherent quality of it. I just look at it and it's like I just don't connect with it. Some people look at Gauguin and they can't connect with that. You know, some people listen to, you know, Alison Krauss and they're like, oh, that's nice. But you know, sometimes I listen to Alison Krauss and it makes me fall on the floor and weep because she's just got such a beautiful voice. It's just one of those subjective things.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, you all know my opinion. I do believe that for the variety that is on this album, I do believe that A Night at the Opera is indeed a masterpiece. And if I repeat myself, sue me.
Okay.
It is what it is. Um, again, the fact that they were going up against so much upheaval and dealing with managers and others, they put the, as they put it, sharks in the water that were coming after them. I believe that they were able to pull out of themselves an album that best represented what they wanted to do at the time. And they were very lucky that they had a manager in John Reed that supported them 1000%.
Yeah.
And went to the mat for them more than once. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The final episode of Is This a Masterpiece? Again, please put down in the comments below what your opinion is of Queen's and at the Opera. Is it a masterpiece? Is it overblown? Is it overplayed? Is it crap? It doesn't matter what your opinion is. Just let us know what you think of this album, along with the other albums and the other 4 episodes that we did for this series. And yeah, we'd like to get a dialogue going. All right. Again, no right or wrong answers, just opinion. So for my 2 co-hosts and cohorts, I still love you guys, even though you blasted this album down to smithereens. For Kentshire, for Jim, the man of the hour, Bricker. I am Armando Venditti signing off. Please stay tuned for a bonus episode on this series titled What Makes a Masterpiece? All right. We'll see you soon. Have a good night. Bye for now.